It's almost 7:16 on a Monday. Mike Sisk at Mike number 2. How's business at Minute Mechanic?
We've been hopping, Dale. You know, we've been very busy this spring. Things are looking pretty good. Of course, we're getting a little bit closer now to our first summer holiday. Memorial Day is not that far away, about 4 weeks or so, 4 or 5 weeks. And yeah, we have been busy, just lots of stuff.
Well, I need to compliment Tony Slater for the outstanding job on the realignment he did on my minivan. Of course, I was at $153,000. I thought, well, it's time for some maintenance. So I did the quick struts and some bearings, and we found a tie rod. A couple of tie rods needed change. And I've had more compliments off that 153,000-mile vehicle on how quiet and smooth it drives. Mm-hmm. And thanks to Tony Slater for a great job.
Well, he does a good job on his alignments. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Tony knows what he's doing, and I'm glad you're happy with it. You put it to the test right away. We got done with it, and you took off for
I put 1,100 miles.
Murfreesboro or somewhere, didn't you?
Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Then went back up to Cookeville, Tennessee, and over to Paducah, Kentucky, Carroll, Illinois, Poplar Bluff, Missouri, and back.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep. Drives like a charm.
Great. I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you. You saved me $24,895.
I need to go charge you more on that alignment, didn't I?
Oh, so we got a question today. Please explain how the oil life monitoring system works.
Well, you know, General Motors, some of the earlier General Motors cars, I remember some Cadillacs that came out in the late 80s that had a change oil light on them. And you started seeing a little bit more of it in the 90s. And now, once we busted into the 2000s, General Motors, about all of their vehicles have some sort of an oil life monitoring system. Now, GM's not the only people doing it, but they really jumped off into it pretty much ahead of many of the rest of the manufacturers. The GM system, you know, there's usually a couple of kinds of these oil life monitoring systems. There's one that will come on every 5,000 miles. Let's just use that as the number. And at 5,000, it comes on. And that's just the way it's set up. General Motors does it differently. It's a computer program, and it takes into account temperature and mileage and engine revolutions, the kind of driving you're doing. Lots of things all figure into a formula that will turn that light on. It does not come on at a set mileage. It just does not. In the GM vehicles, if you change your oil and you take off and you drive across country, you head out for Las Vegas and back, you know, it's the oil life monitoring system on that thing is not going to turn the light on anywhere near as quickly as if you're driving around Mountain Home going to and from work every day. Short runs where the engine doesn't reach full temperature, cold weather, different things, the load that's on the engine. It can tell when if you've got a trailer full of cattle on the back. And it is a pretty complex setup the way GM arrives at a formula to turn that light on. And it is not based on just solely on mileage. It takes a bunch of things into consideration. So when you get your oil changed, then of course you need to reset that oil life monitoring system so it'll start fresh again. And you know, I talk to people almost on a weekly basis about their oil lights, and there's a couple of things I always throw in there. You know, one, the oil life monitoring system, as good as it may be, does not have a clue as to how much oil is in that engine. You know, if your truck or your car is saying you've got 40% of your oil life left, that's good. But we need to take the dipstick out there and check and make sure we're not actually low on oil, because it does not know that. It has no clue if you're low. You can get into a Mercedes and they will know if you're low or not, but that's where don't have that many Mercedes coming in. But it doesn't know what level of oil is in the engine, so we need to keep an eye on that. And the other thing it doesn't know is if you've had some sort of a intake manifold or some sort of a leak where it lets a little bit of antifreeze or something like that get in and contaminate your oil, it doesn't have a clue about that either.
Oh, really?
No, sure doesn't. It does not take any measurements on the oil itself. It doesn't have a sensor that's monitoring oil. It is set up off of what we discussed earlier: mileage, engine revolutions, time, temperature, engine load, things like that. So it doesn't know if you're low, and it doesn't know if there's some sort of contamination has got into your engine oil. So we still need to check our oil, and that's part of the other thing. I'm not going to call it a downside to an oil life monitoring system, and I'm going to say this. Some of the GMs the light won't come on for 7,500, 8,000 miles.
Well, that happened to my brother on his 2013 Equinox.
Mm-hmm.
And when he went into the dealership, they said, hey, it's not showing on the stick. Why did you add oil? He says, well, your book says 7,500 miles. The light just came on. Said, well, you need to change it at 3,000 miles. The dealer told me, he said, well, your book says 7,500 miles.
So when you run one 7,500, 8,000 miles, and for a lot of people, that's going to be a year's worth of driving.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Now, I think the Chevrolet that he had synthetic oil in it, though.
And if you're running 7,500, 8,000 miles and it takes you a year to do it, the drawback on some of that is nobody has checked anything under the hood of that car, maybe not even checked the tires in the last year. That's when most people have all of that done, is when they bring one in for us to do an oil change, is get all their fluids, filters, belts, tires, all that stuff. We check it for them, and then they're gone and they drive and do their thing.
Yep.
And a lot of times, the next time any of that's checked is when they come back to see us again. So if it's going to be a year or so, we need to kind of watch things like that. Things can get away from us. And the other thing I was going to mention too, you said that about synthetic oil. Now, if a General Motors car, if they come out of the factory set up for synthetic, I think they've got a slightly different program set up in that oil life monitoring system, where it'll stretch those oil changes even further. If your car come from the factory set up to run petroleum oil, they're going to have a different program. And they won't know. The oil life monitoring system will not know if you've got synthetic or petroleum in it. So, sometimes you got to adjust on stuff like that. Most of your Japanese cars, Toyota, Honda, and all them, they come on a mileage based. Whatever Honda or Toyota decides is the length of time for an oil change, 5,000, 7,000, whatever it is, that's when they come on. So they're a bit simpler, but they work fine as well.
Bottom line, change that oil about every 3,000 miles, unless you run a Mobil 1 or AMSOIL or something.
And check it.
Check it.
And I always tell people, if you don't feel comfortable checking it, or you just flat don't want to check it, if you'll come by here, we'll do it for you. Come by the shop and we'll do it. And we just need to keep an eye on that. We see vehicles that people run low on oil, and it really causes problems in the engine.
Yeah.
And it's just not worth it to try to stretch out on oil changes a bit. I'm not going to tell you need to be in at 3,000 miles with today's engines and today's lubricants, but we need to keep an eye on
the average.
Yeah, we need to keep an eye on what's going on with the engine oil, and get it changed on a regular basis.
You bet. Next question. Please explain what is involved in a front-end alignment.
Okay. What'll happen on that if you bring a vehicle in? It will depend somewhat on the type of vehicle you have. If you've got a half-ton Chevy four-wheel drive truck, that's going to be a front axle, the front two wheels, we do the alignment. If you come in a 2007 Pontiac Grand Prix, it'd be four-wheel, exactly. We can set a lot of things on the back. But the first thing we do is we bring them in, we jack them up, and we start checking suspension parts. Ball joints, tie rods on a four-wheel drive truck, like I mentioned, the Chevy.
They still use upper control arm bushings?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We look at idler arm, pitman arm, all the bushings, things like that, and try to get an idea of what's good, what's bad. And if everything's good, then we proceed on, and then of course you'll roll it up on the machine and get a reading on toe in and caster, camber, all those things, and see what you need to do to adjust that. Now, in a front-wheel drive car, most of those are rack and pinion, so we do away with the idler arm and the pitman arm like on the older truck that we had, and you start looking for inner and outer tie rods, and you look at play.
You all found one on mine.
Yep.
And I even had mine up on jacks. I couldn't feel it, but Tony found it.
Yep.
And it made a big difference.
Well, it's amazing how a little bit of slack on tie rod ends and the like causes one to wander down the road and not drive.
I thought it was in the bearing, the left front bearing. But when Tony had it on the rack, and he said, and you called me and said, you need to look at this. You got some tie rods. I didn't look at it, just put them on there. I knew I was getting a kick. You could feel the bottom of the tire kicking, and it would jump. I knew there was some looseness somewhere. That's why I went ahead with the bearings and the struts.
Right.
But then you guys found that.
Well, those tie rods, they work pretty hard because every time you turn the steering wheel to go around the corner, they're pushing and pulling on tires and making them do it. And when those tie rods get wear in them, then of course you lose the ability to control the toe end, the toe on your front wheels. And we look at tie rods. Of course, you check ball joints and struts, strut mounts, things like that, and proceed on. And we do a lot of alignments on the front wheel drive cars. And
can you get quick struts through your supplier?
Yeah.
Folks, if you've got a car with 150,000 van, doesn't matter what brand, have Mike do a quick strut, front bearings and alignment. And I guarantee you it may cost around $1,000 to $1,200 or so. It's worth the money.
The quick struts are a great idea.
Yes, they are.
On a lot of these front wheel drive cars, because they come with a new strut, new spring, and a new mount. It's just
like putting a brand new front end under the whole vehicle.
So you replace all of that. A lot of times what you wind up with is you'll put a new strut on and you reuse the old spring and you reuse the old mount sometimes.
Yep.
And so you're getting a new strut. You're getting 1 out of 3 items there that's going to be new. That quick strut eliminates that, and plus they are a little more expensive, but they also save on the labor because we don't have to break your strut down and replace parts. We just unbolt your old strut completely,
Put it back in,
set it on the floor, and then put in a new quick strut and bolt it up, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
They are a
and
good
I
idea.
guarantee you with that alignment system, the way your alignment system and now Tony aligns them, it's like a brand new vehicle. I was so pleased.
Yes.
Yeah.
It drives very, very well with all those parts. Absolutely.
If you don't believe me, try it yourself. Go down to Minute Mechanic, set up a time, put some quick struts and bearings, and have Tony check out the front end. And then for all the oil change maintenance you need, Minute Mechanic's open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. No holidays for a long time.
Well, it's not as long as it was, Dale. Come on.
Minute Mechanic's located Highway 201 North across from Salvation Army. Give Mike and the gang a call, 425-3135.
You're a breath of fresh air, aren't you?
Well, let's see. Christmas is what?
Yeah. Here it is Monday morning.
7 months away.
Monday morning, and he informs us we got no holidays for a long time.
Give Mike and the gang a call, 425-3135. Time for the news. Be right back.